We're back. Yes, we are. That is Tony Shields in for Derek Gunn today. I am Rob Ellis hanging out with you guys on a fun Monday as the Eagles beat the Cowboys 28-23. Yes, move up to 8-1. All right, Tone. So let's dig into a couple things. The other injury, we didn't even talk about this yet. Nakobe Dean goes down with the foot injury and left the game. It's a shame he had a sack, earlier in the game. But you remember earlier in the year, he was on the IR with a foot injury also. So we don't know the status of that. It's been up and down for him. Yeah, I think he's had a tough time in pass coverage. He's shown you he's got that speed, that sideline to sideline speed, that lateral speed. But it's been a growth year so far, as you would expect for a guy getting playing time really for the first year. He played almost strictly special teams last year anyway. He goes down with another foot injury, and this also kind of feeds into what one of the concerns with him coming out was: can he stay healthy? Would he be able to hold up with that frame? Because he's not the biggest guy in the world. But that's another one to keep your eye on because he's already had that same injury, it seems like.
Yeah. Look, I was one of those. I like Nakobe Dean, right? And I was happy with the draft pick. I was happy with all that, right? And he was somebody that I felt like could potentially take over as being one of the better linebackers on his team at some point in his career. Obviously, he didn't play at all last year on defense. We saw him in very, very, very short spurts. And then this season, he goes out there week one. He gets hurt, and the game's not even over yet. We actually see what Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham can do together. And all of a sudden, we see this linebacker core starting to look very serviceable. And then he comes back. And then all of a sudden, we're kind of regressing at that position again. So I don't want to say that, I told you so, but we spoke about the fact that he was a smaller dude, and this wasn't really a conversation about his talent. He's a talented young man. Yeah. But we had questions about, can he hold up? And we had questions about if the Philadelphia Eagles are putting too much responsibility on his shoulders too soon. And we had talks about his ability in pass coverage. And all those things that we had concerns about are actually rearing their head. It's unfortunate that the young man is hurt, and I don't wish injury on anybody. The sad reality is Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham are better for what the Philadelphia Eagles need right now.
Yeah. Yeah. At this juncture in his career, that's the truth.
At this juncture.
Yeah. And we just don't know. Again, we get any kind of update, we'll pass it along for sure as far as that goes. But I mean, this is the portion where we keep it real. You watch what happened in that secondary yesterday, and you watch CeeDee Lamb, do his thing and go for 11 for a $191 and 17.4 yards per catch. And it wasn't just him; it was Jake Ferguson. It was a lot of different guys.
In other words, guys who were taking advantage of the slot in the middle of the field.
Yeah,
CeeDee Lamb and Ferguson were eating the entire middle of the field up, and who was primarily in there. So.
Yeah, that's where it's happening. That's where the attack is from the other teams. That's where everybody knows that they can beat the Eagles at their most. And I'll tell you, I hope it's just that he's kind of run down and beat up, and hopefully he didn't do anything on his knee on that pass interference at the very end. But it was a really rough day for Bradbury. I mean, a really rough day. So again, you're going to get Roby back, which should kind of settle things down a little bit. You could plug him into the slot. We know the outside guys are Bradbury and Slay. This allows you to not have to use guys who are safeties, quite frankly, like Sidney Brown in the slot. But the other thing you're seeing is, and this is just inevitable, I hate to say it, hopefully by the end of the year, it's almost like they've experienced enough where they're not going to bite on some of the same stuff. But Eli Ricks is getting killed. They're targeting these guys. And it's smart by the opposing teams, but it's not just him. There's a lot of guys playing either out of position or with very little experience.
Yeah, Eli Ricks, he's not a slot corner. That's not where his skills are better suited. He's more so a boundary corner. Sidney Brown. It's so funny. Last week on the National Football Show, Sills asked me who would I rather see out there, Eli Ricks or Sidney Brown, and I was like, man, I don't know. Maybe I'll take Sidney Brown, the more physical guy. Maybe he can kind of lay the wood, and maybe he'll get physical with some of these Cowboys receivers, right? And we saw both of them out there, and neither of them was serviceable in any way.
No,
they're both very raw prospects. They're both talented individuals. Play the game with confidence, but they're very, very raw. And it just so happened that the matchups were not in their favor, especially with CeeDee Lamb doing most of his damage throughout his career in the slot. You know, it's so funny. CeeDee Lamb had an amazing game. Amazing game. Got to give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
Right? Put up a lot of yards.
Yeah.
But I'm still not one of those guys who are willing to call CeeDee Lamb a true number one, because he can only really eat consistently in the slot.
Right.
And you know what I mean? That's just where I am. You could put A.J. Brown anywhere on the field. You could put Terry McLaurin anywhere on the field. Stephon Diggs anywhere. Justin Jefferson anywhere. Devontae Adams anywhere. CeeDee Lamb, he's not really consistent on the boundary. Mm-hmm. But I got to give credit to the Dallas Cowboys for understanding their personnel and putting their personnel in a situation where they can constantly hurt defenses.
Yeah.
And I respect what CeeDee Lamb's done. I think CeeDee Lamb is a top 10 receiver in this league for sure, but I don't think he's even sniffing the caliber of A.J. Brown and those guys. But again,
no, he's not there. I mean, I would agree. He's really good, but I don't think he's at that level. But
yeah. And this Eagles, let's be honest, this Eagles pass defense has made a lot of people look good throughout the year. So
I mean, it's not good. I mean, fortunately, so there's two things that have really emerged, about the Eagles defense. One on a positive note, they're very good against the run, and I felt like that continued yesterday. They kept that up. Dallas didn't really hurt them on the ground in that game. And you look at, they're still the number one team by a pretty good margin. They're giving up 66 yards per game on the ground. That's excellent. The next closest team is the Lions at 76. So kudos. It's a really tough team to deal with in the interior, especially. And Tone, they are right now 29th against the pass. They're giving up 257 per game in the air. The only teams worse are the Chargers, the Bucks, and the Jaguars. That's it. Like, the Eagles are giving up more in the air per game than the Bears, than the Commanders, than the Broncos, who got off to that terrible start, than the Arizona Cardinals. You get the gist of this thing. Like, it's a big problem.
Then Carolina, like, man,
Carolina, pitiful. Oh my God,
they're not a good team, but their defense, you can't really get too much in the air on them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. New Orleans and even Green Bay has a top 10 pass defense. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
and I don't know if it's this is the part where I kind of get stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I look at the back end of the defense and I say, okay, I understand you have some older guys back there, but you have guys who are savvy, been in this league for a long time, played the game with a lot of intellect. Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Kevin Byard. You have a young guy in Reed Blankenship who's coming along slowly but surely. You've been very inconsistent in the slot because Avonte Maddox keeps getting hurt year after year, and you're constantly trying to shuffle that position and figure out what's what. Mm-hmm. I firmly feel like if these linebackers were better, the pass defense wouldn't be nowhere near as bad as it is.
Yeah,
it's insane to me, right? I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles have invested properly in that position in terms of what they want from the position. I think they've just been finding guys that can do the job serviceably and not really thinking about what they actually need there. They need some pass coverage linebackers, guys that can hang with tight ends, right? That's what they need at that position, because the reality is you depend on your defensive line to stop the run and the other guys to fill in the gaps. So your linebackers don't have to be tremendous run stoppers. What you need them to be is tremendous pass defenders.
Yeah,
and
correct. Yeah, because you're so good up front.
That's something they lack. Yeah, you're so good up front, right? Like, that's if you're going to sacrifice, right? Sacrifice run defending linebacker for a pass defending linebacker, and your run defenders is your defensive line, and like that's what that's the mindset. But it's they haven't really, in my opinion, done justice by that position, man. I don't know if it's scouting. I don't know if it's understanding the personnel, but
I think some of it is money allotment. They don't want to pay a lot of money to that position. They would rather look. We know their priority spending is quarterback, tackle position on the offensive side, receiver, and then it's not running back. We know that clearly. And then you go to the defensive side, it's edge, and this is not that different from what most teams in the NFL do. But it's edge, it's defensive tackle, it's corners. What's left there? Your linebackers aren't being paid a ton. Your safeties. I mean, Byard's making pretty good coin, but that wasn't a contract that the Eagles signed. So, unfortunately, what happens is really good linebacking play kind of slips through the cracks. Last year was sort of an anomaly. Like they had Edwards, Kaiser White kind of cooled off at the end of the year, but they had better linebacker play than they usually have last year.
Yeah, when it comes to positional spending in terms of this year and the percentage of the cap, the offensive line accounts for 17.9% of the Philadelphia Eagles cap in 2023.
Yeah.
The defensive line accounts for 15.6% of the cap. The secondary accounts for 12.5% of the cap. Linebackers only account for 5.6% of the cap. And that's only $13 million between 6 guys. So you're basically spending about $2 million per guy at the linebacker position. That's cheap.
It's really low. Yeah, I mean, I would venture a guess what the league minimum is for veterans, like those guys, is it's not that further down. They're paying them a little bit more than they absolutely minimally have to pay. Yeah, that's what it's like.
Exactly. And again, the two positions that the Eagles don't prioritize, linebacker and running back, they're outside of special teams. They're two of the lowest percentages. They take up two of the lower percentages of the cap. Running back only takes up 2.5% of the cap. That's right. $6 million. That's $6 million between 4 players.
Yeah, Tina's right. They miss that. They do miss a guy like TJ Edwards. There's no denying that. I mean, they just don't. I mean, they do. I mean, it's clear how much they miss him. And they were hoping that Kobe Dean would be that guy. He's either been hurt or not ready yet, for the most part. And I will say this. I thought Zach Cunningham played a really good game yesterday. I'll give him some props. Morrow, those guys have been fine considering they basically cut Morrow, brought him back. Zach Cunningham was on the street and they grabbed him up. Like they've kind of been stabilizers. You want more than just stabilizers. You want some guys who are going to make some plays sometimes, and it's not there right now. And it's all exacerbated by some of the issues on the back end too. So it's look, if there's 2 things that are going to bite them, Tone, it's going to be turnovers. Well, maybe red zone, but I think that's gotten better. It's going to be turnovers and it's going to be the pass defense. That's it.
And that's why, because look, there's no perfect team, right? Everyone has chinks in the armor.
Yeah.
So what you have to do as a team, as an organization, as a coaching staff, you have to do everything you possibly can to mitigate your limitations by not making certain mistakes, right? Yeah. So, for example, if your pass defense isn't good, and also you're not converting in the red zone, and then you couple that with turnovers, those three categories together can mix for a very terrible cocktail. It can be a Molotov to your entire game plan if you're not converting in the red zone, if you're turning the ball over. Let's really think about it step by step, right? If I'm in offense and I'm driving, I get to the red zone, I don't put up any points, I settle for 3. Now, okay, the other team gets the ball. They drive, they're passing down the field. We can't stop them. They score 7. And then you get the ball back. You're down 7-3. You're driving. Oh, you turn the ball over at midfield. Then you give the opposing team great field position at midfield, and your pass defense sucks. Now you're down 14-3. So you see how those things work in concert.
It's the ultimate team game. It is.
Exactly. So you have to do what you can. That's why if the Eagles can convert in the red zone, which is what they did against the Dallas Cowboys, if they cannot turn the ball over, which is what they did against the Dallas Cowboys, right? Pass defense still was terrible. They still won the game. So you see how you have to do. You can't check every box, but if you check the right ones, you can still win the game.
That's why they value pass rush so much. So what happened? All right. So here's what happens. So you go to that let's just take the last couple of drives where the offense wasn't doing you any favors. They were kind of getting right off the field, as we talked about a little bit earlier. But, that last drive, you get an absolutely clutch sweat sack, which was really, really big on that last drive. Go back to the drive before that. You had back-to-back sacks by Jalen Carter and Brandon Graham, right? Which kind of nullifies that, and it turns into a whole thing, whatever. They turn it over on downs. You don't get those sacks. You don't get the pressure that Brandon Graham had on the 2-point conversion attempt by Dak you lose. So that's why, despite 374 passing yards, despite all the things we're talking about here that are concerning, that's how you win. It doesn't mean that's always going to be the case. You got to be better. Like, this is an extreme. When you give up 374 yards in the air and you win, it's an extreme, and thankfully, the Cowboys kind of shot themselves in the foot. I mean, the Eagles also helped them shoot themselves in the foot. Again, last drive, 1st and goal at the 6, 27 seconds left. False start, that's on them. Sack, that's on them. Incompletion, on them. Delay a game, on them. And then the pass is short of the goal line. Did the Eagles have something to do with that? Of course they did. But, that's some of that is the Cowboys shooting themselves in the foot. Some of that is the Eagles putting pressure on the Cowboys. But we know, like, again, we look at everything like, okay, what happened in this game? Bottom line is they won the game. But we also both have everybody does, most Eagles fans have a little eye ahead, like, okay, so how does this look going forward? Now, let me just pick up on that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We know the schedule coming up is really, really hard. All right. And we know Kansas City is going to be really hard playing there on a Monday night. It's going to be crazy and all that. Good thing is both teams are for both sides, they're going to be very well rested. Okay. 15 days, in fact. Now, Buffalo, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is not nearly as good or consistent, in some part because of injuries and just other parts because they haven't played as well. Maybe that game at home against Buffalo isn't going to be as hard as we thought, right? Niners, my guess is the Niners are going to get their act together and play better than the 3 straight losses. I think we got to kind of wait and see there. I think that's going to be a tough game no matter what. The game at Dallas is going to be tough. Whatever Seattle is, and they looked terrible yesterday, the Eagles never win there, it feels like. So that is going to, I think that's definitely going to be a tough game. But then, and once you get out of that, it's 2 New Yorks and an Arizona, which, both teams are terrible. If you come out of this stretch, the Kansas City, Buffalo, San Fran, Dallas, Seattle. Okay, so that's 5 games. Come out of that 3-2, you very well could end up being 14-3 again, if you care to win any of those last games. Now, you might have it wrapped up where you don't have to play. Who cares? You lose, who cares if you have it wrapped up? But it still ends up being an unbelievable. You could be 13-4, and I think that's probably going to be enough. The only thing that worries me a little bit, Tone. All right, so let me just real quick give you Detroit, what they're looking at here.
They're not getting talked about enough. They're right there in the mix.
Well, and listen to this schedule that they have, right? They're off this week. They're at the Chargers. That's a kind of tough game, but we know the Chargers are all over the place and inconsistent. But after that, they're home against the Bears. They're home against the Packers. They're at New Orleans. They're at Chicago, home against Denver, at Minnesota, at Dallas, home against Minnesota. Like, that is a cakewalk of a schedule. So they're going to be in contention, in my opinion, for the number 1 seed. They are. They're going to be right there.
I think, you bring up some great points about Detroit, right? They still have to play the Vikings twice.
Right.
And they got the Saints and the Packers, right?
I'm not really shown a lot of heart, by the way. They've shown a lot of heart.
If I'm being honest with you, the Detroit Lions, as good as they are, they've had moments where they've kind of, like that Ravens game, and I understand the Ravens are really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
But 38-6 is kind of like, whoa. But regardless, I'm looking at this final stretch for them. I think they split with Minnesota, honestly. Yeah. I think they split there. I think the Cowboys get them at the end. Look, man, say what you want about Denver, and I think Denver can maybe eke that out. It's like, because Detroit is still an unfinished product and they're still learning how to win consistently, I think they can very well drop a Saints matchup. They can drop Broncos matchup.
Broncos have
with the Vikings
quietly kind of figured it out a little bit. They're playing much better football. And if you look at Russell Wilson's numbers, let me give you his numbers real quick, because I was looking at this today. Mm-hmm. So as much as I think we just assume like he's been awful like he was last year, right. He hasn't been. They started off terribly as a team, no doubt. But, he's got 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's completing 66% of his passes. He's got 1,600 yards passing, a 101.7 passer rating, and he's got 200 yards rushing. I'm not telling you he's the Russell Wilson peak Seattle guy, but he's he's bounced back from how bad it was last year.
Yeah. I wouldn't consider him a liability at this point. I just look at them as a team that's, I don't know. They're talented. It's weird. It's like they're kind of like the Chargers. They're talented, but something's off there. You know what I mean? So again, I think because I'm looking at the standings right now, right? Let me just double back to these standings. Look at the standings right now, and I'm not looking at it from the playoff perspective. I'm looking at just the standings. Straight up. You got Eagles 8-1. You got Lions 6-2, 49ers 5-3, Seattle 5-3, Cowboys 5-3, New Orleans Saints 5-4. Believe it or not, and you also got the Vikings 5-4.
Yep.
Like who's to say Seattle won't drop another one? Who's to say the 49ers or the Lions won't? Like I just feel like this is why being 8-1 and winning this game is so important for the Eagles, because you put yourself in a position where you have some slight room for error.
Yes.
You have some slight room for error.
You do. And that's why it's so big, Tone, to get to 8-1 going into that stretch. That's why it was so
absolutely critical. And Buffalo looks very, very beatable right now.
All over the place.
Who else do we have here? 49ers look beatable, in my opinion. I think that they may be healthier by then. Who knows? Seattle looks beatable, even though we don't really do well on the road there. I think this is a different Eagles team, man. We talked about it last year when we went to Arizona, right? When we played Kyler Murray and those boys. We didn't really win in Arizona. That wasn't something that happened for us. But somehow, some way, we got the win. Was it pretty? It wasn't the prettiest game at all. But it still got done. So I look at this, it's with and this goes back to how I feel about Jalen Hurts. With him,
right?
I look at every game as winnable, no matter where they are.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? And I never felt this way at any point, maybe outside of that 2017 season with Carson Wentz. But, and maybe this is me just being biased or whatever. I don't know. But Jalen Hurts, he approaches the game in such a way that you have no choice but to respect his game, and you have no choice but to think he can win it. They're so good situationally in third and fourth down, man. You can win a lot of games being great on third and fourth down and having the offensive line and the defensive line that they do.
Yeah, I think just Hurts, but it's more of a team thing for me. Like, there isn't a game you go in feeling like the Eagles don't have a chance. Like, I'm pretty sure if here's my guess, I haven't even looked that far ahead. There probably aren't lines out for that far ahead. But I think the Eagles will be the underdog against Kansas City, which
I think so. It's a possibility. It's a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, I think they will. I think that at home, they'll be favored against Buffalo. They'll be favored against San Fran. They'll probably be an underdog at Dallas, and they could be an underdog at Seattle. So you could have 3 games.
I disagree right there. I think they may be favored against Seattle. Even though they're on the road, I think they may be slightly favored.
I think it
not by
depends
much.
what Seattle
not by much.
Does the next couple of weeks. I think it depends on how they look. But it could be, Tone. I mean, it could go either way. If Seattle continues to, they look bad yesterday. If they trend the wrong way, we'll go into it in a minute because Geno's struggling right now. But if they're trending wrong, then yeah, absolutely. But I think the two, and again, unless Dallas really falls off, which I don't see, I think Dallas plays. I think the Giants this upcoming week, they're going to kill them. But they'll be underdogs against Dallas and KC for sure.
Yep. And when we go to the next segment, I have a question for you that I want you to think on, and we'll answer it in the final segment. I mean, not final, but the next segment here, because we're going to talk about the rest of the NFC East and the rest of the NFL. But we're at that point in the season where I feel like a lot of teams are beginning to separate themselves, right?
Yes.
Separating the Super Bowl contenders from just the playoff teams. I'm not talking about the bottom feeders right now.
No, I know
the Super Bowl teams from just playoff teams. Mm-hmm. I want you to sit with that and tell me who do you think has legitimately separated themselves from everyone else in terms of Super Bowl contention versus just being a playoff contender.
All right, let's dig into all those things when we come back. We'll keep it rolling with the Eagles and the NFL discussion on this Victory Monday. He is Tone DeShields in for D Gun. I am Rob Ellis. All right, let's tell you about Pro Action Restoration. You have a home, you have a business, you've experienced the pain, the inconvenience of fire, smoke, mold damage to your property. You're not really sure who to turn to. I have the folks that you can turn to. That's Pro Action Restoration. They're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. The beauty is you have something happen at night. You have something happen crazy, on a holiday, a weekend, whatever, a Sunday. you're not really sure who to turn to. Well, they're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week to assist. I can attest to this because I reached out to them on a Saturday and they came out to my parents' house. They fixed the problem. It was really a relief in a lot of ways. Pro Action Restoration is licensed, bonded, fully insured, and they've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action will work in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, water, fire, smoke damage, mold remediation, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.